Welcome to Security Heroes, a podcast by Athena Security. We share real-life stories to help connect you to real heroes in the security world. I am your host, Lisa Falzone. Warning, the following recording contains potentially disturbing content. Listener discretion advised. So joining us today is Stacey Porter, the founder and principal consultant of Porter Global Security, where he provides vulnerability assessment and risk management solutions to private businesses as well as public facilities like schools and churches. Stacey has a distinguished background in security at the federal level with over 2 decades in the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. He has served as a supervisory federal Air Marshal, a federal agent, and even a member of the Secret Service, providing security at the White House. He leverages that physical security expertise in his role as a consultant, and we're thrilled to have him sharing that expertise with us today. Stacey, thank you so much for being here.
All right. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
So, what do most organizations miss when it comes to vulnerability assessments?
Great question. It's not that they miss a lot. One of the things that I see in organizations is that they get comfortable, meaning that they know it's there, or some may know it's there, but for some reason you need that third set of eyes to come in and validate some of the things that you've been talking about within the organization. So a lot of times when I go in and, see the vulnerabilities, what I'm looking for, I'm pretty much validating some of the things that have been talked about or discussed. I'm not sure why it takes a third party to come in and validate that, but for some reason, it just carries a lot of weight when you have a professional consultant come in and talk about these vulnerabilities. Organizations, again, they're there for the dollar. But one of the things I like to reiterate to them and talk to them about is liability. Your employees that run the company, pretty much, they're the liability, and you want to make sure they're protected as such. So definitely want to ensure that you're mitigating those vulnerabilities and ensuring that your facility as well as your employees are safe and can do their job to the best of their ability.
Yeah, and what are the biggest vulnerabilities that you're validating?
Again, when I go in, I always like to start outside and work my way in. So I'm more focused on the physical security aspect of an organization. So when I go in, again, just opening up the eyes of an organization. So again, it can be something as easily as a prop door, easy fix. I'm not going to go into your organization and tell you this is what it's going to cost you, and you're going to have to spend this amount of money to mitigate everything. We know that's not realistic. So let's look at prioritizing things. How can we go A, B, or C, or 1, 2, 3? So you may have in your budget, some money to say, okay, the first year we're going to implement security cameras or more cameras on top of what you already have. So going in there and just being realistic and looking at things in a cost-effective way is the way I like to do things when I do my assessments. Not all organizations utilize a perimeter fence, but if you have a perimeter fence that's around your facility, I'm looking at that perimeter fencing. Do you have signage on the perimeter fencing? Do you also have some gaps within those perimeter fencing? Access control, meaning do you have a security gate or some type of gate access for vehicles to come in and park their vehicle at an organization? Once I start doing that, I'm taking photos. Of course, I'm taking notes because I'm trying to build a report when the assessment is over so I can present that final report to my client and give my recommendations within that report and find ways on how we can mitigate those vulnerabilities.
Awesome. With all the continued school shootings, what's your biggest recommendation for school safety these days?
Well, one of the things I like to talk about when it comes to schools, of course, when you talk about a school shooting, it's magnified. We know that. But if you look at the data, how often does a school shooting happen? There's so much going on within the school outside of active shooter. Of course, you have to have some plans in place for an active shooter, but there's so much going on within the schools with students, teachers. You may have issues with parents coming into the school causing issues. We see a lot of that. One of the things we miss when it comes to schools, a lot of schools, they utilize a bus access. What do you have in place in the event of a fight at a bus or after school when the bus is dropping off the students? So how are those bus drivers, implemented as far as security is concerned? Are they going through some type of training as well? So those are the things that I look at when I'm talking with schools. Again, you have to have a plan in place when you talk about active shooter. Just like you have your fire drills that they have to do those on a regular basis. But you have to be mindful when you're practicing active shooter drills within a school because one, are you doing it when the students are there, or are you doing it when school is out and you have a police agency or whomever you're going to hire come in and run these drills? So keep that in mind because you have that shock factor with the students and some with the teachers as well when you're doing active shooter drills within a school. Also, when you have to factor in those type of drills, you have to look at, special needs students, if you will. Do you have a plan in place for that? How do you get them to safety and as well as all the students within the school? It comes to active shooter drills. So that's some of the things I try to focus on when I go into the school. I want to look at the big picture of the school and not just look at the active shooter drill.
So taking a trip down memory lane, the Secret Service is obviously the gold standard for heroic security teams. What was it like being a part of such an elite organization and what makes it so effective?
Another great question. I always tell people when it comes to security, we have one time to get it right. It's kind of like you're a pilot of a plane when they go to land that plane. They have one time to get that landing right. So, we can't afford to have any mistakes. And one of the things I'm proud of when I started my career with the Secret Service as well as the federal government is that we've gone through extensive training. I've gone through extensive training with our organization and having been assigned to work at the White House, worked for two former presidents. And, I've seen a lot, done a lot, traveled quite a bit within the organization prior to me transferring over to the Homeland Security with the Federal Air Marshals. But it was a great position. It was a great job. Did a lot. I learned a lot as well. And what made me make that transition over to the Federal Air Marshals because we all know what happened on 9/11 when the planes were hijacked and crashed into the World Trade Centers in New York, the Pentagon, and Arlington, Virginia. I was working that day at the White House, and we were preparing for a congressional picnic that day. Fast forward, after everything was all said and done, former President Bush created Department of Homeland Security. So, I sat back, thought about it long and hard and said, what can I do along with many other law enforcement personnel within the country or throughout the country is to ensure we never have another attack on our homeland. And that's when I transitioned over to the Federal Air Marshal Services. And that's when I really started, diving deep into the assessment piece, started doing risk assessments of our nation's airports. So I always like to joke and tell people if you've flown into an airport, most likely I was part of the team that did the risk assessment on that airport. And then ended up in Atlanta, Georgia, got promoted to a supervisor, wore that hat for a while, did many things within the supervisor role, and then decided to retire and took all that experience I gained from the government and started my consulting services business and try to carry that over into my consulting business and assist organizations, schools, and churches, as you mentioned at the beginning.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, just talk about like the risk assessment that you were making and what sort of technology that you recommended that should be at the airports and how that those decisions are made.
Okay, yes. One of the things I like to say, which you've traveled quite a bit, I'm sure many of us, all of us on this call, we've traveled quite a bit through airports, and there's so much technology, and technology changes quite a bit at airports. One of the things that I will do is that, of course, I'm breaking down your camera system. I'm looking at that, looking at your access points, as far as what doors can you go through and how those doors secured. Now, when it comes to technology, I don't recommend a particular company, so to speak, because I try to be careful and stay in my lane. Because if I'm recommending a certain company and say you co-sign with that company and things aren't working the way that you thought they were, then that could possibly fall back on me and say, well, you recommended this company to us and it didn't work like you said it was supposed to. So what I do is I'll recommend companies if that's what they're into as far as technology. And then what I'll do is I'll step out of the way and I'll let you guys have that conversation on what's best for the airport and what would be utilized at the airport. Now, you can't continue to reach out to me and you say, okay, this is what they're saying to us about the technology. Is this something that's legit, or is this something that we need to move on and look at another company? So those are the things that I do when I say recommendations. I'll give you maybe a 1, 2, 3, and then you guys will have that conversation with the airports will have that conversation with the
Sure.
technology companies.
Sure, sure. So what was it actually like working at the White House on 9/11? What was going through your head? If you can talk more about that day.
Sure.
Oh,
When you talk about crisis, that was definitely a crisis situation. We were again preparing for the congressional picnic that they do every year. It was out on the South Lawn, so you have so many moving pieces going on. Former President Bush, he wasn't at the White House at the time. He was down at Florida at an elementary school at the time, visiting a school. So again, back at the White House, you had staff members moving all over the place. You had the staff in the kitchen preparing food for the picnic, and lo and behold, get an announcement over. I have my earpiece in, and I get an announcement come in, and I responded to a location at the White House where it was a group of us bunched around the TV, and not trying to sound dumb or anything like that, but I actually said, is this actually real? Is this a movie? What's going on? Didn't know what was going on at the time. So fast forward, we were told, yes, there's a terrorist attack occurring right now. And that's when we just went into full action, started clearing everybody out of the White House and pushing everybody off to the north side of the White House, which is Pennsylvania Avenue. So, ran through the kitchen, not me alone, but a group of us just trying to get everybody to turn everything off, put everything away,
mhm.
just explain it to them. There's a crisis going on. We need to get everybody out. And thankfully, no one was, okay, what's going on? Questions, anything like that. We just got them out. And keep in mind, you have the press that are stationed at the White House as well. So they have their radios and they have the TVs and they knew what was going on. But again, we just had to get everybody out of the White House. And I do remember this particular incident where a plane flew over the White House. I don't know till this day. I still don't know what plane that was. I don't know if that was a plane that hit the Pentagon. I don't know because it flew over the White House and it did a loop. So again, I don't know if that was a military aircraft or that was the plane that hit the White House. It was just so much going on. Just a long day. I do remember. I don't know what time it was when all was said and done. I remember going home. I just got home, jumped in, got cleaned up, and changed my clothes, and jumped back to my vehicle and drove back to the White House. I mean, adrenaline was going so much
Yeah.
that I didn't know feet, back, anything was sore. I just knew I had to get back to the White House and do my job.
Yeah, to me, even like 20 plus years later, to me, it's just crazy that happened. And,
Yes.
but wasn't the plane that went into the fields in, I think, Pennsylvania, wasn't that supposed to go for the White House or attack the White House or?
I mean, of course, there's so many stories out there. We don't know for sure if it was the White House or it was the Capitol building, but it was definitely headed to Washington, D.C., is what we were told. And thankfully, to the heroes on that plane, those folks took action. And that's what I was told, that the plane went down in the field. They have their memorial out there, of course, recognizing the individuals on that aircraft.
Yeah, I read that book, Let's Roll, by one of he was like Todd Beamer that, helped organize the coup against the terrorists. It's
Mhm.
very, very, just crazy, but, yeah, very heroic. Anyway, so you travel with the president even internationally as part of his protection detail. Did you ever have to handle an in-person threat?
Never had to deal with anything like that. I didn't serve on PPD, Presidential Protection Detail. That's pretty much a core group of individuals that you'll see on TV that are close proximity to the president. I was
Mhm.
more on the outer perimeter. Again, you have this circle, if you will, and you start building that circle and say, okay, this is the outer protection. And then, so I serve various roles when I travel. Today, I may be assigned to the floor of the hotel where the president first family stand. Tomorrow, I may be assigned to the hallway that leads to the kitchen of the hotel. So I served in various roles as when I did travel. And
Mhm.
again, it was a group of us because prior to the president going to where he needed to go, you do your intel. Okay, president's going to Atlanta, Georgia. How many individuals are we going to need for this detail? And that's where you go out and do your advances and say, okay, you call back and say, okay, we need this amount of individuals to get everything situated for this visit from the first family or from the president.
So how did your time in the Secret Service inform your current security consultancy, and what lessons did you learn?
Good question. Learned a lot of lessons, of course. When I first got hired on by the Secret Service, I never served in a role of law enforcement. So they trained me the way they wanted me to train. So I take that to heart. Thankfully, my background as an athlete, I was able to do all the physical fitness activities. But as far as a weapon, never shot a weapon until I got hired by them. And again, they trained me the way they wanted me to train. So, I did extensive training on the weapon. Then again, I think most of my consulting came from the assessments that I did on the airport when I was under the Federal Air Marshal. So that's how I honed in on my skills because, of course, I didn't just go out to the airports and start doing these assessments. There was extensive training that I had to go through, various classes I had to take so I can hone in on those skills and ensure that I knew what I was doing when I got to the airports because there are so many different regulations, which we know it's run by the federal government, all airports, but the airport, I'll use Atlanta, for example. So the airport within Atlanta is run by the city of Atlanta, but the federal agencies have the final say as to what happens within the airports. But most airports, when you have the city and federal, most of them, they do work together. They're continuously having meetings, talking about various procedures and policies that are put in place.
Awesome. So you do vulnerability assessments for schools, churches, other places that don't necessarily want heavy security measures in place. How do you balance the need for security with their desire for, to be welcoming and openness?
One of the things I learned when I started my business, I remember someone saying to me that, you're definitely going to have to hone in on your sales skills. And I said, no, I work in security. That's my background. That's what I do. I don't work in sales. And then I finally thought about that. I have to sell what I do. So again, I like to be transparent about everything that I do. And, I'm a salesperson, if you will, just making sure I hit home with them and having that relationship with your client. You're not going to get, 100 yeses from everybody, but at least you're going to get some yeses. And when you get that yes, you want to build that strong relationship with your client, and hopefully they'll continue to bring you back for more work. One of the things I also like to reiterate to my clients, I like to look at things in a cost-effective way. Let's look at what you already have in place, and let's see if we can, make those security measures stronger, if you will. It sometimes, I tell people all the time, when security works, it's because of people, and when security fails, it's because of people. So if we can get, everybody on board to understand how important security is, and if you don't understand the importance of security, that's where myself, along with many other consultants out here doing this type of work, try to reiterate to our clients on the importance of security.
What's the biggest vulnerability that most schools or churches can address right now?
Biggest vulnerability, when you talk about schools, most of our schools are in, communities where you may know most of the folks in the community. So I see it a lot when you walk into the schools. Most of them now have the vestibules, but if I'm walking into a school and, I happen to turn around and you're coming behind me, a lot of times I'm holding the door open for you. You never had that conversation with the receptionist at the school, but I just let a stranger into the school, even though we may know each other, but you don't know what occurred in my household the night before, and I don't know what occurred in your household the night before. So I don't know what you're bringing into that school, but yet I just held that door open for you. As far as our churches, again, active shooter, that's been a hot topic with many organizations, but I try to get folks to understand that, let's look at active threats. This one leave a backpack in the back of the school or back of the church, or this one leave a backpack out in the parking lot. Things like that, I try to talk to and reiterate to them. Churches, a lot of times, a lot of people don't focus on the parking lot area, meaning that a lot of your threats could occur in the parking lot. And most incidents do occur prior to you getting into the building. We saw that with the Lakewood church out in Houston, Texas, where the individual went in with the rifle or the AK under her coat, if you will. But no one paid any attention to that individual walking out of her vehicle, grabbing that AR and walking into that church. So let's put that security not just inside the facility, but that's also take it outside the facility and make sure we can stop the threat before it gets inside the building.
Yeah. So how would you have, if you were to, how would you have stopped that?
Well, again, not everybody's built like Lakewood. So I know Lakewood has extensive security because it's a huge facility. So again, if you see something, say something. That's what I like to tell people, not just see something, say something, but do something. Again, I don't recommend anybody run up to an individual with a gun. But the first thing you could do, if, okay, you can see something, say something, maybe they can go into a lockdown mode at the church so individual cannot get in. So you want to deter as best you can so you can stop an individual from getting inside. So if they go into lockdown mode, maybe that individual say, okay, I couldn't access this door right here. Let me go around to the next door, see if I can access that door. And again, you're just buying time. So with you doing that, hopefully 911 or police has been called and they're en route to the situation right away. So I know not textbook when it comes to security, but you have to think and think fast, because once an individual gets inside, knowing that there's more opportunity inside for that individual, then, it's a bad day for everybody. So if we can see something, say something, and report it right away. Hopefully individuals, and a lot of times they may not have a lockdown procedure, so that may not be part of their emergency plan, and that's where I can come in and assist with that.
Awesome. Yeah. So, in conclusion, do you have any specific heroic actions or, or heroic people that you want to talk about and highlight?
Well, I don't have one particular person per se. I always tell people all the time, I'm thankful to be part of an organization where, we're all security consultants. And I like that because we get to bounce off of each other, ideas off of each other. So if there's something that, I have a question and I don't know the answer to, and I'll be the first to tell you, that's a great question. I mean, I have the answer, but let me do some research. I like to reach out to these individuals and bounce information off of them, and vice versa. They'll try to reach out to me and say, hey, thinking about doing an assessment on the airport. I know that's your strong suit, Stacey. How can you assist to help me with this? So no particular individual per se, but just being part of the organization, and not just being part of an organization, get involved when you belong to an organization. And that's something I've been doing since I've been part of this organization, is getting involved as best I can, going to different conferences and learning from various technology companies about, new things that are coming out. How can they be utilized when I go out and do my assessments and recommend this company to the organization? Just meeting and running into individuals I haven't seen in a while, and again, picking their brains and learning from them. So conferences and networking is definitely important for me to learn and hone in on my skills.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Stacey. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. This was great, and look forward to sitting down talking with you guys more.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. Talk soon.
Okay, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Security Heroes is brought to you by Athena Security. To find out more about Athena Security and how we help save lives through our weapon detection solution, visit www.athena-security.com. And then make sure to search for Security Heroes in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Athena, thanks for listening.